Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius podcast. My guest today is Michael Silverman. He's the president and CEO of Silver Lining Insurance Agency. So we're going to talk about, the products they offer and their perspective on risk and why people need insurance and all that good stuff. So welcome, Mike. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, tell me a bit about your background. What attracted you to the insurance industry years ago?
Well, I'm actually third generation. So, it's not that I was born into the business, but I love being a salesperson. And I have always found that being a salesman, you're helping people. And the insurance business is no different. I love what I do for a living because I am making a difference in people's lives.
I don't know, do you think that's an unusual perspective in your business, or what do you see from other agents that you work with?
What it comes down to is it depends upon the person. If the person is looking to make a career and have relationships and friendships and this and that, yeah, they care. So that's what they want to do. If someone is in it just to make it a business, it's different.
Okay.
My clients have become friends. My family are my clients. That's the way I want to operate because that's the way I want to be treated if I was a consumer. I try to instill in my team, put yourself in the consumer's spot. And when you're speaking to them, make believe you're the client. Hear how you're saying it. Don't speak insurance. Speak in English. No jargon.
No, that's true, right? People don't understand perils and risks and, this rider and term rider and all that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And don't use abbreviations. Don't use EPLI, employment practice liability, that kind of stuff. Directors and all.
Okay. What's the environment like right now? I mean, I can tell you what the environment is like for me and a lot of people is insurance is going up like insanely quickly. Any insight into why and what's going on?
Well, and it's going up everywhere. We're licensed in most of the states of the union. And whether it's Florida, California, New York, it doesn't matter. Rates are going crazy. Replacement costs for construction is going up and up and up. Parts and materials have increased. We've seen it significantly post-COVID. And the insurance companies are getting killed on claims. So that's why rates are skyrocketing. I mean, you can throw in legislative issues in various states, but that's state by state. So everything is a little bit different. But, costs are just increasing. And it doesn't matter whether it's insurance or the price of eggs at the supermarket.
So insurance is based, heavily on replacement costs in case of loss, or what are the main drivers for insurance, just out of curiosity, that's causing it to go up so much? You mentioned them, but if you could maybe mention them.
Sure. Replacement costs, a house burns down. What's it going to cost to rebuild this house? What's labor cost? What's lumber cost? Steel, materials, etc. Cars, just the sheer cost of automobiles these days. You rear end one of these electric cars and just damage the bumper, it's 10 grand between all the sensors and all the electronics. Just the sheer cost of what it costs to replace or repair has skyrocketed.
Okay. Makes sense. What did you hear growing up from your dad and your grandfather about insurance? Any interesting things that, from that long perspective in the industry?
Everything I heard over the years as a little kid and then growing up was how fortunate we are to be in the position that we provide the product, we provide the service that when a family or a business has a problem, has a disaster, they're protected because we were there. It's not about premium dollars. Premium dollars is important, obviously. No one wants to pay more than they have to, but making sure you have the right protection for what you believe to be your exposures are, or we show you your exposures are if you didn't see certain things. We're fortunate. We're lucky because we get to do this every day of the week. Now, is it hard work? Of course it is. But what's not? When we talk to people, we are changing their lives. And I've said this a million times to people. I truly believe we are doing God's work. As silly as that sounds and as hokey as that sounds, when does someone truly, truly, truly need their insurance professional? When there's a problem.
Right. Why for some people insurance has such a bad name? Like I've even had my own personal experiences where I just think they're a bunch of bastards. Why is that?
Because you don't have a relationship with someone. Hey, do people think I'm a good guy? I hope so. Do some people think I'm a bad guy? Maybe. But they're not, when they complain about the insurance, they're not complaining about me. They're complaining about an insurance company. But it's my job to have conversations around why certain things are done the way they are. Why are rates what they are? Why is this covered, but that's not covered? I'm not a lover of surprises except on my birthday. When it comes to business, I don't like surprises. I want to know exactly what's going to be happening and how it goes. Now, are there changes? Yes. But I should be able to prepare for the what ifs in my business. And when I prepare for it and then what I prepared for is not there, then I get angry. And I respect that and I understand that. My job as the insurance professional to Richard Jacobs is to explain the pros and cons, the yeses and the nos, and what's out there and available to you and at what financial expense.
Well, I mean, I'm just being very frank. Like my experience with agents is you talk to them, then they don't hear from you for a long time. Then when you call them, they're like, oh, you got to call the insurance company. I can't do anything for you. Right. Yeah. I've seen that over the years a lot. It's like, I don't know, they just sell you the policy, they're gone. And like I said, when the time comes, they're like, well, that's not my job. You call them up. Bye.
Well, we have only seen that with certain carriers. So a number of what are now called direct writers, where someone has a contract with a carrier, a producer has a contract with a carrier, and all they're allowed to do is sell. They're not to service. That's what the 800 number is for. But I don't want to do business like that. So I don't even work with those carriers because that's not relationship building. That's sales only.
What if you do if you have a car claim or a house claim, one of your clients has one and they're like, the insurance adjuster's a real bastard. They're treating me like a criminal. They won't do this. They're killing me with all the paperwork they want. What do you do if that's the case? Let's say I'm with ABC Insurance and that's what I'm experiencing. I call you up. What could you do?
It's really very simple. And it happens because people are people. What do? We set up a meeting in person, not on the phone, not on Teams or Zoom, mano a mano, in person, the client, myself, and the adjuster. And we sit in a room and we figure it out as adults. No arguing, no yelling, no nothing. Let's talk it through. Hey, Mr. Adjuster, why do you need all this stuff? Okay, great. You justified it. We'll get it for you. But here's what we got. We need some help. So we have conversations. I love using email for business purposes. I don't like using email for communication because there's no inflection in email. It's black and white.
Yep.
When you're having a conversation with someone, they see the emotions. They see it. So it is all about communication. And my job is to sit on the side of my prospect, my client, and help guide them through what could be the worst process of their lives. A house burning down is horrific. An automobile accident, sure. I have always said a $10,000 or $20,000 fender bender is far worse or far more complicated than a car that's totaled or stolen. You start anew.
Well, just like our house, we had like a flood in the kitchen and it flooded a couple rooms and it wasn't a whole destructive process, but partially, we had to like live in the construction and it was just terrible. So I understand what you mean. It's like a car being, not totaled. It's nice when it's totaled in a way because you're like, all right, I just start fresh. So you fix stuff and then it might not be fixed right.
Agreed. You got to wait for parts and then rental cars and this and that. It's always something.
Yeah. Okay. So what's, I don't know, what are, I've been thinking throughout the years, what if you come into an unusual situation? Like what if you have a house where it's, I don't know, the cost to replace it is more than the insurance you can get on it, or the cost to replace it or the cost to fix stuff is more expensive than building the house from scratch. the damage is so extensive. Like what happens in those scenarios?
Well, that is the scenario where repairing is more than the value. The insurance company is going to total the house. They knock it down. But
You total a house? Like what happens then?
bulldozer?
Oh,
Yeah. No, realistically, the conversation is, hey, why is the replacement cost on my house so much more than I even bought my house for? And that's been the conversation more and more over the last couple of years because the value to rebuild has actually become higher in certain areas than the market value. Now, there isn't included short, you insure to value. You, as simple as you take the square footage, you multiply it by a factor, and there's what it's going to cost to rebuild. Exact science? No, but pretty darn close. But then there are areas where it's just the opposite. I have a dear friend and client, bought a home out in sunny California, one of the, what we tease and say, one of the high rent districts. He spent $10 million on a house. The replacement cost is 2.6 because we're not insuring the view over the Pacific Palisades. Location, they say in the real estate world.
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
so is there? I guess with cars, there's a gap insurance. If the value of the car is 5,000, then to get an equivalent is 10,000. Let's say. So with houses, is there such a thing as gap insurance too?
No, but you have to insure the value. You get replacement cost. If you're insuring properly and you have replacement cost, your policy will pay to rebuild the house. Now, there are policies that have what's called extended replacement cost. I insured for $1 million, and that's the right amount. But because we're in a global pandemic, for example, it's going to cost $2.7 to rebuild, $2.7 million to rebuild. Certain insurance companies will pay the $2.7 million.
Yeah, like I ran into this with a roof. It was, I don't know, 7 years old, and luckily the insurance I had, I think it was called actual replacement cost or something, because they were like, oh, you have the roof for 7 years, and therefore we give you the depreciated value. And I was like, well, I just moved in here like 2 years ago. What are you talking about? I didn't get use of it for 7 years. And they're like, sorry, that's how it is, and blah, blah. But then, it was discovered I had this rider and all that. So thankfully they covered everything. But I was like, oh man, I didn't realize what kind of terrible trouble you can get into if you don't have good advice from an insurance agent.
That's what I've always said. That's why when people call 1-800 whatever and get their own insurance, I can't tell them what they have because I didn't guide them. That's why having a professional, someone who does this and this only, is so imperative. There are so many nuances to insurance that a doctor, an attorney, an accountant, a business owner of any nature, a layman, a non-insurance won't know. Does it make sense to have a $500 deductible or $5,000? Well, let's figure it out. And we do calculations together. That's consultative discussion and selling. Does it make sense for me to have my cars with the same company as my homeowner's policy? Maybe. It depends. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Why wouldn't you want that? I think people do that to bundle their expenses, right? We'll get it back.
But what happens if one company has a particularly good rate for auto insurance and their home is not as competitive, but the differential between the home is the premium? You're better off separate than together. Why have them together?
It makes sense. Fair.
But that's my job. My job is to bring options and opportunities to my prospects and my clients. What's out there in the marketplace? What is available to you in your area? Because what's available in New York, New Jersey is not available in Texas. Or what's available in Texas is not in Wyoming, that kind of stuff.
Right. What are some of the, I don't know, like the mistakes you see people have on their policies? Not looking to blame, but what are some of the holes you see in coverage that are common? Maybe put it that way.
As you said, actual cash value versus replacement cost. That's number one. Having very low deductibles. It's not worth doing that. Raise the deductible a little bit, save some premium. use that premium to buy different insurance or more insurance. Buy an umbrella liability policy with the premium savings. Now you're using the same dollars to get so much more. Those are the things we look at. Why do I have collision coverage on a 17-year-old automobile? Now, there are times it makes sense to have it, depending on the car, depending on the condition. But did anybody have a conversation with you about that? When you call 1-800, they're not having that conversation.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true. Yeah, I learned also too, like, let's say you got to replace something and the code to replace it has changed. And now instead of it being 5,000, it's 7,000. And there's also riders to make sure, like, I guess if there's changes in code and things like that, that they'll be incorporated, they'll be paid for. I thought that was a crazy kind of loophole, but
ordinance of law. That's it.
Okay.
When the building codes in your region change, does your insurance policy stay updated by having ordinance of law in your policy? You don't have to change anything because it follows the law. If the law changes, so did your policy.
Interesting. So if I'm here, anyone that actually reads their policy,
me.
That's good. God
That's my job.
For being able to do that.
Now, I don't know anybody who reads their policies, but I always tease with my clients, if you can't sleep one night, a glass of red wine in your auto policy, you'll be asleep in 10 minutes.
You say I'd make it a policy to read each one. Maybe that would be your motto.
I like that.
Your dad joke. Okay. So you have any like anecdotal situations that were really instructive for people listening? So I can hear that you in particular, seem to go way out of your way to help people more than most. But what are some guidance? So let's say someone needs, auto, home, whatever it is, anything to look out for, anything to avoid as they're talking to different agents?
Well, number one is you get a referral. Who do you know that used this person? Who do you know that knows this person? Insurance above anything else is a relationship industry. No one calls my office and is then asked for their social security number so we can pull your stuff up in the system. No. Hello, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, whatever. It's by name. This is relationships. We have 5th generation clients. We're fortunate. It's nice to know. I know about my clients and their family and their children and their children's children and who's in college and who's doing that. That's what it's about. You want to be able to have confidence in the person to whom you are opening your economic world. So I will say to people all the time, when we're starting to work together, I'm going to ask you a great deal of information, a lot of questions. And if you really want to put it bluntly, you are going to get financially naked in front of me.
Yeah, it's very comfortable for pretty much everybody, I'm sure.
It can be uncomfortable. Yes, it's the same as going to a doctor. When someone says, I don't need that in my insurance, one question I have is when the doctor gives you a prescription for a penicillin or for some kind of antibiotic, do you say, I don't need?
Well, it depends if you trust the doctor, but yeah.
If you don't trust the doctor, you shouldn't be. It's the same thing as your insurance agent. If you don't trust your insurance agent,
Makes sense.
it's all about trust. And you hit the nail on the head, whether an attorney or a doctor, an accountant, hey, you owe $25,000 to the Internal Revenue Service by April 15th. No, I'm not going to pay. I don't want that. Yeah.
Well, they'll just put a gun to your head. Take
Yeah, they just put you in really cool bracelets with a chain and
designer bracelets. Great. Even better.
But what we do is no different than any other service business. We're personal. We are. And whether it's a business or your own individual stuff, it is personal. It is private. It is emotional.
With like identifiers redacted, what are some examples, situations you run into, not, say nobody's name or anything, but what are some memories you have of situations that really spoke to you, made you feel like good about what you do, or, it was a close call or something like that?
I'll give you a perfect example. One in particular, it's about 15 years ago, maybe even a little bit more now. I was referred to someone, a neighbor, believe it or not far down the block from me. And they had their home and their auto and their umbrella and their all with one insurance company. And we sat down and we were looking at it, and he was gravely underinsured on the value of his home. Now, first of all, I didn't have to do a lot of calculations because I lived 4 houses. So I knew the neighborhood. I knew the cost. He was insured roughly for $680,000. We wrote the policy. We wrote the policy in July of that year, and we wrote it for $1,350,000. The insurance company came out, did an inspection. It was increased to $1,400,000 and change. Okay. September 1st of that year, 5-6 weeks later, they had a massive fire. The house was gone in an hour and 45 minutes. It took almost a year and 3/4 to rebuild the house and get them back in. They had 3 children, one in high school, and 2 in junior high, if I remember correctly. And they had to stay local, so they rented a townhouse at $15,000 a month. They had no choice. They had to stay local.
But a lot of
Yeah, they were out of pocket zero because they had unlimited loss of use coverage. Talked about it. They had full and extended replacement costs on the value and replacement costs of their home. Because their claim was obviously higher than $50,000, their deductible was waived.
Oh, really? I didn't know that happens.
Some companies, yes. And, but this is what we do for a living. And this was life altering for these people. We still talk. I still see the. It's really very interesting. The date of the event happened to have been September 1st of that year. Every September 1st, need it or not, we have a phone just to acknowledge it.
That's cool.
And all he says the same thing every time. Thank you.
Yeah, it's weird. Right, 45 minutes for some. It's like the flood we had. It took like 5 months to get everything fixed. And yes, we did have to come way out of pocket. Yeah, people talk all the time. I do sayings.
Sure, people talk all the time. I don't need that much loss of use coverage. Why would I need all that? Why? Because it doesn't take 3-5 months to rebuild a house. It takes 2-3-5 months just to get the permits in some areas.
Yeah, it's true.
You haven't got a blade in the ground yet.
Terrible. I remember in New York with Hurricane Sandy, people were, they lost power, their houses were messed up, and then the city finished them off, asked for permits and all this other stuff. And yeah, some of them it was years. Some of them they just gave up. Terrible.
Absolutely. But what you have to remember is, you started by talking earlier about how some people bitch about the insurance company.
Right.
Talking about Superstorm Sandy, October 2012. It's amazing that it's 12 years already. Many people don't realize that the insurance industry and Governor Christie in New Jersey, and I believe it was Governor Pataki at the time, I don't remember who was the New York governor, they agreed that this was not a hurricane. It was deemed, the industry and legislator deemed it to be a superstorm, made a huge difference in people, changed deductibles, changed coverages.
What did it do?
Some people have $1,000 deductible on their home, but they have a 3% hurricane deductible. Oh, 3% deductible on a $1 million house. That's a real deductible versus 1,000.
Yeah, 30.
Right. So not deeming it a hurricane when it crossed the land, they were able to they called it superstorm, but it was just a storm and it was regular deductibles. So the industry, see, I always try to explain to people, insurance companies, their job and their goal is to, in fact, pay claims. Everybody says, oh, their goal is not to pay a claim. That's not the case. Their goal
was to squeeze every penny out of everyone until they're dead and there's nothing left.
No, I'm not going to, I'm a salesman, but I'm not going to agree with that. Their goal is to pay it properly, pay it as per the policy, not to screw the client, not to just automatically pay the least, but pay it properly. I had a personal claim many, many years ago where we had some water damage from a snowstorm, off the roof and all that kind of stuff. And the adjuster came out to the house. My wife was home. I was not. And they walked around. They took some estimates. They did this. We had an estimate from our contractor. And the insurance company, the adjuster took our paperwork and called my wife back about 2 or 3 hours later and said, Mrs. Silverman, we got your estimate. No problem. This is going to be approved, but we're adding $3,500. We don't think you have enough in here for electrical work. So insurance companies' goals are not to screw the client. It really is to pay the claim. Now, you have to have the right insurance for them to be able to pay the claim. That's my job.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad there's stories like that,
I have more positive stories over the last 38 years than negative.
So can you work anywhere in the U.S. or where can you work or where can you not?
We can work everywhere that we are licensed. We are licensed in all 50.
Is it all 50 states or there's some states that you don't work in?
No, we are licensed in all 50 states and have clients in all 50.
Okay. And you do, I guess it's called what, property and casualty? Do you do life insurance?
Yes.
What you do and not do?
We write a lot of life insurance, a lot of disability income. We do medical insurance planning, benefits planning, and of course, property and casualty, personal and commercial insurance. I don't want to sell somebody a homeowner. That's not my goal. My goal is to be that person's insurance professional. I want to be, as we like to tease and say, I want to be the guy. When they got a problem, they know who to call. I may not have all the answers, but I know where to go to get. So that's fine.
What area of insurance do you think is prone to the most difficulty for people Like I'm not going to say ignorant. Well, I guess ignorance. Ignorance is the highest, and people could have like really serious problems if they don't know what they're doing or if they're not guided by someone that knows.
Automobile insurance. And I'm staying away from the commercial insurance because that's a whole nother ball of wax. On personal insurance, the biggest opportunity to really hurt yourself is on the automobile insurance because that's where the numbers can get crazy because you just don't know. It's not about the car. You hit somebody and hurt somebody. You may talk a lifetime of dollars. We've always said, death, unfortunately, in the world of economics is less expensive than lifetime injury.
Oh, really? Wow. How much could these amounts be?
Billions?
Sheesh.
Millions?
And most people, I'm sure, have like probably minimal coverage and, who knows if they have personal injury protection and all that stuff.
Correct. I mean, think about it. In the state of New Jersey, the minimum liability coverage that you're allowed to have and still have a registered vehicle is $50.
And that's just for the car? It's not for the person or what?
No, that's your liability. That's your damage to someone or someone's property. If I'm driving along and I hit you, Richard Jacobs, and I bang your car up, bang you up, I got $15,000 covered. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Of course it's nothing. Your car is worth more than $15,000. Forget you.
Yeah. Yeah.
The state of New York, it's $25,000. Other states, it's 10 or 30. It's crazy, the minimum. But that's the life we live in, and that's the life we have to work through. None of my clients have minimum coverages because that's not appropriate for the exposure that they have.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, do you often run into situations where someone's like, I know I need it. I just don't feel like I could afford it. What do I do?
You have to make some decisions economically about what's important to you about money. Are you looking to be protected or you just want to be able to drive around? Are you what happens if you do hurt someone?
Have a lot of stuff like that. Yeah, you could be in big trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's what keeps the lawyers in business.
Yeah. What's the name of your agency and how can listeners find out more? Where can they go?
So the name of our agency is Silver Lining Insurance Agency. We're in Midtown Manhattan, and you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, of course, our website, www.slia for Silver Lining Insurance Agency. So www.slia.agency. You can find us there. We're on LinkedIn. You can pretty much Google Michael Silverman Insurance and you'll find me.
Right. And this is a strange question, but just because you're in downtown Manhattan doesn't mean that your stuff's going to be more expensive than someone based out of Kentucky, let's say.
Absolutely not. Remember, insurance is state regulated, number one, and we don't make the rates. The insurance companies make the rates, and they have to have them approved by the state before they can even be put into the computer systems. So no, if you, Richard Jacobs, quote a homeowner and I quote the same home and we quote the same coverages with the same company, we better have the same premium or one of us is playing it. There's no...
I didn't know that.
I
negotiate. I thought, I'm telling you like my honest thoughts. That's why I mentioned that, I just wonder if anyone listening would be like, oh, you're in New York. They're going to charge a lot of money.
We do not charge fees. We charge what the premium is. That's it. We make a commission, yes. But with most of the products that we provide, you can't get it without us anyway. So you're not paying extra to have us.
Okay. Well, that's great to know. No, that's really good. That's very helpful. Oh, excellent. Well, Mike, it was very good to talk to you, and I hear your earnestness throughout the entire conversation. So I encourage people that, that need help to look you up and to talk to you. I've had, again, personal experiences doing insurance, and, if you have to come out of pocket because of whatever reason, you may have it, you may not have it, and then you're really, really, really in trouble if you don't. So, I used to blow off any thought of insurance myself, but it is necessary. I understand. So again, thank you, and thank you for being here and explaining everything.
Thank you for having me, and I'd love to come back sometime.
Excellent.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.
Extra to have us.
Okay. Well, that's great to know. No, that's really good. That's very helpful. So excellent. Well, Mike, it was very good to talk to you, and I hear your earnestness throughout the entire conversation. So I encourage people that, that need help to look you up and to talk to you. I've had, again, personal experiences with insurance, and, if you have to come out of pocket because of whatever reason, you may have it, you may not have it, and then you're really, really, really in trouble if you don't. So, I used to blow off any thought of insurance myself, but it is necessary. I understand. So again, thank you, and thank you for being here and explaining everything.
Thank you for having me, and I'd love to come back sometime.
Excellent.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed. Podcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.